Hello and welcome to Lead From Within. I'm Nick Taylor, the CEO and co-founder of Unmind. And for today's episode, I am joined by Kristy Banas, who is just the most inspiring person, just CHRO of WTW, an organization with nearly 200 years of history behind it, entering this next chapter of the world with AI. Kristy shares with us her insights into how she thinks HR teams need to be strategic, and HR leadership is about strategic business leadership as much as the people leadership. She shares with us the importance of financial literacy and ability in HR functions and people. She shares with us her predictions for the future of HR, the importance of curiosity and embracing new technology. And also, really interestingly, she shares her own story growing up and what led her into the world of HR. I loved speaking to Kristy. I hope you enjoy listening to the conversation. As always, please do subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts to make sure you can hear the future conversations that we have. Thank you so much. Welcome to Lead From Within, the podcast for people leaders that explores the fascinating intersection of mental health, leadership, and performance. Kristy, welcome to the podcast. I've been so looking forward to this conversation. Where in the world are you right now?
I'm in my home office in Parker, Colorado. It's great to be here. Nice to be with you, Nick.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining first thing in the morning. I would love to talk about so many topics today, ranging from your role through to what you see as the future of work. But perhaps if we could start with a more personal introduction, I'd love to hear about you and tell me about who you were growing up and what your life was preceding your role today.
I was a bit of a nerd, to be honest, so I didn't have any athletic trophies, but I'm proud to say I was the Adams County District 12 Spelling Bee champion when I was 11 or 12.
Ah.
I was part of the latchkey generation, so it was also, I think, generally a time where kids were just less supervised than they are now. I mean, I remember taking off on my bike with friends in the summer when we were probably only 9 or 10 years old, and we'd be gone all day and nobody would have the slightest idea where we were. I can't imagine doing that with my kids these days. But that was normal then. So my sister and I, we had a lot of freedom, but we also had a lot of responsibility growing up, helping around the house, watching out for each other. I think that, was part of what developed some of my character early on. In terms of things that we like to do as a family, when we got away, it was usually camping, which I still love to do. And I was fortunate to grow up in a family that really valued laughter and humor. So I'd like to think I'm a little bit funny. One of my kids said to me, what if I have children and they're not funny? It's so embedded in who we are. I said, don't worry about it. It's in your DNA. They'll be funny.
And do you still camp? Did you go camping this summer then?
I didn't make it out this summer. We went through a period of time when the kids were younger where we did a lot of camping because I really wanted the experience to take them out where they were away from their devices. They could bring friends with them if they wanted to. And we just got away and spent time out in nature. And the time goes by so fast. As you know, your kids are a lot younger than mine are still, but it goes by in a whirl. And so it was great to be able to spend that time with them. And they still like it too, but we don't get it as much as we used to.
And how, so I have, as you know, I've got 3 young children, and every day my day begins when I'm in the UK with doing spelling practice. But I'm a long way away from raising children who are winning spelling prizes. So at some point, you must share the magic formula for how that happened.
My dad did a lot of drilling with me. I can remember sitting in the living room and drilling. Yeah.
So fast forwarding a few years then. So you got to through school, and then what happened after that? What did you study? What path did you think you were taking?
Well, I didn't take a traditional education path either. So my parents had saved up enough for a year of university for me, and I was quite afraid of taking out loans. So I went to school for 1 year after high school, and then there was no funding, so I went to work. And so I'm sort of a walking advertisement for the value of learning on the job.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually finish university until I was well into adulthood, and I did it nights and weekends, and I don't recommend it, but it definitely builds character and resilience. And so that was how I got through school. So I actually started my career in accounting and bookkeeping, and I was doing some M&A work and going to school at the same time, and had a major career shift where I moved into HR, and I was in HR when I finished my education at the University of Fairfield in Connecticut.
How do you think that impacts on your view of hiring historically throughout your career? Because I think there can be a lot of bias around education in the hiring process. So has that impacted on how you perceive the kind of route that people should or can take?
I would say it has, and our CEO feels the same way, fortunately. So WTW, we have removed college education requirement as the default in our job descriptions, and so you have to put it back into the job description if it's truly a requirement. And there are a lot of roles where it does truly remain a requirement, but there's a lot of roles where it doesn't, and where on the job equivalent experience is just as valuable.
Yeah, do you know, we do the same. So we actually, if you're the hiring manager, you can't see somebody's education. So you don't know. Obviously, like you say, there are some roles where you really have to have it. So if you're a psychologist, it's quite important that you've actually become a psychologist along the way. But a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
And so then you started working in accounting and finance. And how did you go from that? Because that could have led in one direction, couldn't it? It could have taken you down a very different path to one you took. So how did you change direction?
There's two things I would say. So I started in that because I could, because I had a capability and a skill set that lent itself to that, not because I had a passion for it.
Yeah.
So there were two things that happened. One, I started to get a little burned out. But the real turning point is I was working for a company doing a lot of small acquisitions. So we were buying up a bunch of mom and pop entrepreneurial companies and integrating them to our company. And we were taking the entrepreneurial nature of these companies, and we were absolutely smashing it in how we were trying to integrate these companies into our governance and our structures in a very rigid way. And so I could see that we were actually taking the value of these companies out as we were trying to integrate them. And it was heartbreaking. These were companies that had sometimes been in multiple generations, passed down. Maybe it was something that the individual had started up 20 years ago, but they were highly successful companies, and the path forward was not looking very positive from my perspective. And so I left. I couldn't be part of that. And so I took a job in a very ill-defined chief of staff, program manager, junk drawer kind of role. So I worked for the chief administrative officer and the CEO for an insurance company. At the time, it was just XL. Today, it's AXA XL, doing a hodgepodge of activities. And the CAO ran HR in addition to a number of other functions. And so my integration experience got me interested in HR and talent, and what you can do to deliver value through HR, and what you can do to strip out value if you don't do HR well. And she had a lot of faith and vision for me and what I was capable of and the potential that I had. And so she really stretched me in my time there and put me in quite a few different roles in HR when I indicated that I was interested in going into the HR function. So that was the shift for me. And half of it was luck, and half of it was doing the best that I could with the luck that I was given.
It's quite amazing, isn't it, with hindsight, as you get further into your career. I was thinking about it yesterday. When you look back and just realize what a role luck can play in things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really extraordinary.
I certainly did not solely manifest where I am today. It was owed to mentors and sponsors and being pushed in different directions, and a windy path that I never could have laid out for myself.
But does it surprise you, or do you feel that you've landed in a place that makes sense?
Oh, I think the latter. I'm enormously grateful for it. I don't think it's a surprise. I didn't anticipate early in my career being in this role, but as I became more senior in my career and started to build out experiences, then I became very focused on this being the aspiration that I had. So then it's a combination of luck and sponsorship and doing a great job at the opportunities that you're given. So you continue to be given opportunities.
And you mentioned the mentor there. How did you know, at what point did you know with the relationship with that lady that she was going to become a mentor to you, or that she would influence your career? Was that something that happened just very organically, or at some point did you think this person can really help me find my direction?
I knew it when I interviewed with her. So I'll give her a shout. Her name's Celia Brown, and she's produced a number of CHROs. So she's a great developer of talent. In our interview, it was one of the later interviews, second or third time that we spoke, I hadn't yet finished my undergraduate degree. And she called me out on that. And she said, this is the only thing that doesn't make sense to me about you. You're capable and ambitious, and I just don't understand why you haven't finished yet. You must finish. You must go back to school and finish your degree. And they also put me through quite a rigorous interview process. I think I must have interviewed with 12 different people.
Wow.
Maybe a little bit excessive, but
Yeah.
but it did give me the opportunity to get to know a lot of the senior talent that was going to be in the office that I'd be working with. And I could very clearly see they were people that I could learn from and who would be generous with their knowledge and opportunities. And so it was a great opportunity to be able to go to work for Celia specifically, but also at that company and the leaders that were there at the time.
I'm really interested in this idea of how we connect with people. So in the world of therapy, it can have a huge impact on the effectiveness of therapy. For example, that relationship dynamic between the person seeking therapy and the therapist. And I think with mentors, there's something very similar to that. So Celia presumably had all the professional qualifications, but was it either her background, or was it her style, or was it her personality that unlocked that proximal learning for you and growth?
I think it was all. So she was a lawyer by trade, which brings a different discipline and approach to running HR. And I think that lens was very helpful for me in developing some very particular skills and capabilities underneath her. Yeah. But also she was very good about pushing and stretching. So she asked me to take roles that I hadn't envisioned for myself, that weren't on my master plan. Throw your master plan out the window, right? Have aspirations, but the master plan is never going to look exactly like you think it's going to look. But she was quite good about saying, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. I spent probably one of my own reflections and learnings is I spent too much time earlier in my career, the first couple of weeks on a new job or on a new project, thinking I was in over my head and probably wouldn't make it. And I did. I've yet to be fired. So, knock on wood, those things worked out. And I think sometimes you have to have trust and faith in yourself and in the process and in what somebody else sees in you.
Yeah, I know. I agree with that. And you mentioned two things I want to dig into. The first one is that when you were doing the first role, you felt that feeling of burnout. Why did you use that language? What was it that you were feeling, and how did you know it was that?
So I think that it was a combination of the pace at which we were working, because we were acquiring companies frequently, and I was doing a lot of travel with the acquisitions. And so it was a combination of the hours that I was working, the travel on top of it. But what really impacted the burnout was that I didn't like what we were doing. I didn't like what I was doing. I didn't like the way the company was doing. I didn't like what I saw coming for these companies and these human beings. If we had been doing it better, and if I had had a passion for it and I saw a bright future, I don't think I would have landed in the same space.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. If you feel a disconnect between your inner drive and purpose and what fills you up with what you're doing day in, day out, it grinds you down, doesn't it?
It does. Absolutely. Absolutely does.
And then you mentioned, and the second thing I wanted to talk about is that then you said that at some point you got to that point where you had clarity about what you wanted to be. So was that you suddenly realized, well, because I can see how all of the things you've described lead you into people as a function. But was there a moment when you thought, actually, I want to be a CHRO? I want to be a chief people officer or chief human resource officer?
Yes, I looking back, I think it really was when I became more aware of and had a deeper understanding that the CHRO role is a business leader role first, and that it's much, much greater than the talent strategy and overseeing and being the curator of the talent strategy for the organization. But the very first role is being a business leader.
What does that mean to you? But what does that mean to be a business leader?
So having the enterprise future vision strategy, benefit for the enterprise, being much more in tune to various stakeholders and the stakeholders that you're delivering to, whether it's shareholders, the board, the leadership team, every single colleague, and what that means as a steward for the organization and both the responsibility, but the impact that you can bring if you are a business leader first and an HR leader second. I really liked that I'm a numbers person. And so the ability to leverage my background in finance and accounting in HR in a way that you don't often see deep into HR. I think in order to get to the CHRO role, you have to have that these days. It's price of entry, but you don't see it as a fundamental skill set and a capability that's regularly built in the HR function. And so that's one of the things that I've tried to do with my team and into the organization is develop a stronger sense of financial acumen in the function.
And do you think that it makes perfect sense what you're saying? Do you think that in the time of which you've been on this journey, there's more recognition or more normality or normalizing of the CHRO being a business leader first, and that potentially elevating the role of the CHRO into the world of the CEO?
I would say yes, and so the CEO, CHRO, CFO, that's a very tight triumvirate that sits at the top of the organization, in addition to the rest of the leadership team. But the trust that has to exist between those three roles, the things that you work on together, the things that you're aware of at different times in the organization, it's such an important relationship, and it flows through to engagements with the board and how you think about the strategy for the organization. And so, yes, and then the and from that is when I look at board composition and the type of roles that are still most desirable and most placed on boards, we're still a little bit behind. So it's unusual still to see a CHRO be placed on a large public company board, and I think that's a gap.
Do you think that will change in the next? Do you see a world in the next 5 years where that's different, or do you see it going in a different direction?
It's been edging forward very slowly, so I think that will continue to be the pace. I don't ever think you'll see CHROs on boards to the same extent that you see CFOs and business leaders on boards who've run large P&Ls directly. But I do think it will continue to edge forward. So there's a few more opportunities, and they see the value of having, particularly for organizations where the organization is talent, like we are. When the product that you offer and the value that you bring is talent, having a CHRO on the board, I think, is more critical.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. So this is a kind of perfect segue. On that note, tell us more about Willis Towers Watson and also about your role within the organization.
Sure. So Willis Towers Watson is almost 200 years old.
Amazing.
So we do all things human capital, risk, and advisory, and work with our clients on making sure that they get the most out of their human capital and help them manage their risks in a way that works for them as an organization. We're very customized in how we work with our clients. We have almost 47,000 colleagues all around the world in 140 different markets and countries.
Huge number.
It's huge. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah. It's wonderful. And so I oversee HR, corporate brand and marketing, and then internal and external communications.
When you go into work, which are the parts of your role that you think that's my absolute bread and butter, and that's an area that I need more support on? Or do you feel you're pretty affair with all of them and it's kind of a balance?
Well, I'm an SME in the HR space, so I have a great team around me who are deeper SMEs in the spaces that they lead and oversee. But I'm a fairly decent SME in the communications space, but didn't grow up in that area. I'm not an SME in marketing and brand, and so I definitely rely on my leaders who run communications and marketing and brand to do that for me. So I stay connected with them to support and help be sounding board and to help drive, but they're the ones that really know what they're doing in that space.
I think one of the things I find most interesting is when you have a diverse team such as that. I mean, this spans so many different parts of the organization, and especially when it's an organization that's almost 200 years old, which is just incredible, and is so big. How do you keep that team unified? How do you run the team? What's like, practically speaking, day in, day out?
So we work closely together, but because the content of what we're working on in any particular time is different, I don't have a single leadership team meeting. So I have an HR leadership team meeting, and then I work separately with the head of brand and marketing, the head of communications, and they co-lead a lot. And so sometimes it's the three of us working together. But my leadership team is dispersed, just like WTW's leadership team is dispersed. We spend a lot of time on video calls, and we try to get together in person a couple times a year. So you don't lose that in-person connection. We're particularly flexible as an organization in where people work. We really leave it up to leaders and teams and local offices to decide what works best for them and what they need and what their clients need locally. And so our team is largely remote or hybrid. So we get together at least once a week and ad hoc as needed to work on the strategy, to share what our challenges and opportunities are, to make sure that we're staying connected one of the things that we really pride ourselves on across WTW is the degree to which we have very close collaboration and access to talent and support for our talent across the organization. I have a team that's been together for the most part for quite a long time. I have one person on my leadership team that's a little bit newer, but we have a lot of trust and respect to be able to work as honest brokers with each other.
Yeah. That honesty is so key, and that ability to know one another on a deeper level as well. Do you think that having, because a lot of organizations have real commitments to inclusive hiring or to culture or to values or to people-led talent development kind of strategies, and sometimes that those really well-intentioned things can get lost because people functions can be siloed or less front-facing. But because you have that marketing and brand piece there, do you think that allows you to actually advocate more strongly on those really key parts of your company's identity?
I do. So there's a few things I say about marketing and communications both. So HR is a little bit unique in the number and breadth of stakeholders that we have. So I mentioned this a little bit before, but our stakeholders are our investors, our board, our CEO, the executive team, but also every single colleague. So having really clear, inspiring, concise communications, that's critical for understanding, alignment, for drive. And then marketing, of course, helps to ensure that our clients know who we are and what we're doing and how we can help them to improve their performance and to manage their risks. So I kind of look at it like a three-legged stool where we're all working together for perfect balance and to make sure that we're creating a stable foundation for the enterprise.
Yeah.
So one example, earlier this year, you may have seen this, we just reintroduced our legacy brands. So we had come together in 2016 as Willis Towers Watson. We shortened our brand to WTW a few years ago. But what we were hearing from clients on the ground is that we had lost a little bit in leaving our legacy brands behind, because we do have on the Willis side almost 200 years of history, on the Towers Watson side almost 150 years of history. And so there was great value in bringing those legacy brands back where it made sense alongside our WTW brand. And so that, of course, spanned brand, marketing, communications, and internal messaging.
Yes, of course. Yeah. I often find myself at the beginning of a meeting when people are introducing themselves, and because WTW has, such a kind of foundation pillar in the community, lots of people have worked there or been through there. And I often hear people say, oh, well, I was there when it was this, or it was, at that stage of the growth of the business. So that's great to hear about the legacy brands. Within your teams, where does mental health and wellbeing sit, and how do you, where does it sit first and foremost?
Not in a single space, and I don't think that's probably unusual. So part of it sits with our I&D team, part of it sits with total rewards and benefits, and part of it sits in learning and development. So we really work together on the broader well-being offering.
How do you ensure that in that scenario that they are tied up well together? Do you have a kind of a global strategy that everything then feeds, each of those departments feed it off and into?
We do. So to get somewhat tactical, as we narrow down our priorities, one of the great things about HR is demand always exceeds capacity. You're never lacking. You're never lacking for people wanting your time and attention and for you to do more. So as we narrow down our priorities for the year and calibrate that with the enterprise strategy and what means the most to the business and what's going to move the dial the most within what we can afford, then we all as an HR leadership team align together on what we're going to be working on throughout the year. So improvements to our well-being strategy, additions to our well-being strategy, whether it's new platforms that are coming in, additional development programs that help with well-being, then we're very, very clear before the year even starts exactly what we're going to be doing and who's accountable for and who's on point for which aspects of that.
I like the way you tie it to L&D and also to talent development, because I think those that they often miss those connections, and when it ends up becoming siloed as purely a well-being for well-being's sake, it actually loses its gravitas in an organization. The reality is, by learning about it as a leader or as an individual contributor, it can really enhance not only your inner world, but also how you show up in the external world, and therefore should be part of L&D and talent. Yeah.
There's an ownership element where HR is a lever and HR is an enabler to making sure that the broader enterprise owns different things. So, for example, I've heard some people before say that HR owns culture. I don't believe that. I believe
Yeah.
that HR helps to define and articulate the culture and put the resources in place that help the entire organization lead on the culture and protect and maintain the culture. And same thing with well-being. The whole organization owns it.
And what about the relationship then with DE&I? How do you see those topics linked to well-being?
Well, there's a lot of research out there that indicates that if you're in a particular group or facing certain circumstances that are unique to you as an individual or you as a group, that can have a profound impact on the probability that you may have some mental health issues throughout your life and some needs in the mental health space. So I think it's really important for our I&D team to stay connected with what we're doing on the well-being space so that through our inclusion networks, we're talking about it openly and honestly. We're aware where we need to have safe space conversations. We're making sure that people understand what resources are available to them and doing what we can to drive uptake of those resources.
You mentioned safety there. Is psychological safety a kind of a term that's part of your culture? Is that something you reference a lot?
Yeah, so we're very focused on a culture of belonging. So belonging and psychological safety go hand in hand. One begets the other and vice versa. And you can't have one if you don't have the other. So that psychological safety is very important.
And it goes back to what you were saying earlier about burnout as well, doesn't it? Which is that if people are in an environment that creates friction, be that in purpose or belonging, then actually it's very hard for that person to perform in an optimal way. And that's where I think the well-being and performance topic is so interesting. And that's also why I think well-being and inclusion is really linked as well.
And the performance element too, you mentioned performance, but psychological safety is a huge lever to drive performance. You have to be able to have open conversations that are real and honest about what's happening. And if you have a different perspective on something, if you think somebody's missed something and what they're trying to drive forward, or there's other perspectives they need to hear, people have to feel comfortable having those discussions.
Yeah, that's right. And it's also, the evidence very clearly shows that when an environment is psychologically safe, it fosters creativity. And of course, creativity is critical to problem solving. They're absolutely linked. The world is clearly changing a lot at the moment. And I'm not going to ask for your kind of views on the world of politics, but like the world is changing. Like, what's your, as a really senior leader in the corporate world, what's your view on that kind of transformation that the world's going through and how businesses need to be looking after their people?
Yeah, that's a big question. So change is constant, right? And this is just a different kind of change that we're experiencing right now. And so communication, back to the triumvirate, communication is really key. Making sure that you're creating an inspiring and transparent vision around where you're headed. Being as transparent as you can. You can't always be fully transparent with colleagues, but where you can, be transparent, communicate frequently. When you feel like you've gotten to the point of over communicating, communicate some more. There just can't be enough. Talking to colleagues about why something is happening, or why you're responding to something in a particular way, or why you're headed where you're headed and what their role is in it. Storytelling around wins and getting some energy in the organization around, we're headed in this direction, we're having to make these changes, why, and here's how it's manifesting, here's how it's showing up, and here's why it's good for the enterprise, here's why it's good for our clients, here's why it's good for you, so that you're creating an emotional connection around it. Certainly reminding colleagues of the resources that are available to them if they need to draw on well-being resources. But I think just talking to people and making sure that they have a clear understanding of what's happening in the environment, what the impact is on your business, therefore what the impact is on them as colleagues, and what we need from them to drive through it is really important.
It's interesting, isn't it, to think about how this, you're right, change is constant, but at least from my perspective, since the era of COVID, it's felt like it's been dialed up to 11 in terms of like world events and economic realities, etc. But in your experience, how does this period of change compare to other points in your career? Do you feel that there's is it as different now to then, or is it more of the same, the change?
Oh, I think it is. I agree with you. I think it is ramped up. I do wonder though if this isn't the new normal. So
Yeah.
if you look back at the pace of change over the last 30 years, from my perspective, it's continually increased over time, and technology is one contributor to that pace of change. I can't really talk to why some of the chaos that's happening in the world today is as
Yeah.
ramped up as it is. But I do agree with you. It has been more. And so the need to stay close to colleagues, both from a top-down perspective and communicate to colleagues broadly, but in teams, to check in with your teams, to take the time at the beginning of a call or a meeting to say, how's everybody feeling? This came out in the news yesterday, and I understand it may be affecting some of you in different ways. Do you want to spend a few minutes talking about that before we launch right into our agenda? Having those touch points and check-ins and not losing that personal aspect of work is important. One of the things about our culture that I genuinely believe is quite different is the extent to which we care about each other here. And so it's easy to get heads down and to just plow through what you've got on your agenda and what you've got on your plate. There's plenty to do without taking a moment to check in with each other, but it's so important.
I want to comment to the technology point, but I think you're absolutely right. It's like now more than ever, we need to connect with each other. Like it's just so critical that humanity needs to be present. But the technology point is obviously so relevant, and we're all talking about it. We're all reading about it. It's the impact that AI is going to have in the workplace, and it's quite astonishing. Some of the things we read and hear and experience in how transformational this technology could be. How do you as a leader think about this, and how is it impacting on your actions?
AI is in every conversation that every leader has, it seems like these days. And when I talk to peers, it's always part of the conversation. When we're at leadership team meetings, it's part of the conversation. And so if you don't embrace it, you're going to get left behind. So there's a great quote from a Harvard Business School professor, Kareem Lakhani. You may have heard it before, but AI won't replace humans, but humans who use AI will certainly surpass those who don't. I think that. It's a great quote, and it's what we're seeing. There was so much fear as recently as a couple of years ago that AI was going to start replacing jobs entirely at a pace that we haven't actually seen. But what we have seen are some amazing benefits in terms of the extent to which it can supplement and benefit jobs, and it can free people up to do more strategic work and more value-added work. And so that's where we're focused primarily. So we're looking at both solutions we can deliver to our clients. So we've created some new solutions that are AI enabled, and then going back to existing solutions and adding AI to make them more effective. I'm pretty fortunate working here because I get to leverage our expertise and solutions. Sometimes earlier, I get to be pilot once in a while, and so we're taking advantage of that as well. Yeah.
It's very exciting, isn't it, when you get to see this new technology, and it's sometimes really can be quite mind blowing, actually.
It's exciting. I mean, we look at a couple of different things just quickly. So we look at, what's the financial business case, of course. So where can you bring AI into the equation, and where can it drive savings or drive efficiencies? Or without making hard savings, where can it drive higher productivity? But we are also looking at, from an HR perspective, where can it drive a better colleague experience? So the financial business case may not be as compelling, but if the colleague experience case is compelling, which does have ancillary financial benefits that are harder to quantify in terms of the extent to which we can then retain and keep stronger talent, the talent that we take to our clients, and how that flows through from a revenue perspective. Both of those things are key levers that we're looking at for AI. And I've been really pleased with in the HR function, marketing and comms, the extent to which people have really embraced it. We have a huge AI community of users that people across the company in all functions and in all businesses belong to share ideas. People are creating agents and sharing those agents so that you don't have to duplicate that elsewhere. The amount of innovation and idea sharing that is available to people is really inspiring.
Really inspiring, but I'm fascinated to hear about how you're quantifying the value there. I don't know if you've seen, but the Harvard Business Review just published an article saying that a lot of rollouts of AI tech have yet to be proven to be valuable. And that's, I think, an inevitable part of the growing cycle as we work out how do we quantify it. And I think some of it's really hard to quantify. But are you, when you do pilots or when you roll out new technology, are you very, that's AI enabled or AI led, are you very specific in how you think about measuring the success of that?
Yes and no. So when we're pitching for investment for new AI, there are assumptions that are made in a financial business case. How we prove those out is less about specific AI metrics, because it is very hard, to your point, to correlate in many instances a savings or a productivity gain solely to the AI solution.
Yeah.
So rather than try to do that, which would take time and energy and probably would still be imperfect, we're more focused on looking at productivity and efficiency metrics and presuming that AI is an enabler that's contributing to that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I'd love to know. So, when you think about the role of AI in mental health and well-being, it's as disruptive as in any other area, really. And there's I read recently a statistic that said that 1.6 billion people around the world are seeking mental health care, but there's only 2.8 million professionals to provide it. Right, so there's a clear, huge gap, and I know that. I didn't need the data to know that there was that gap. I've managed healthcare teams in frontline services and seen firsthand what waiting lists look like. But it's nonetheless really calling out for innovation in line with AI. There's so much opportunity. But at the other side end of the spectrum, we all see and hear the really tragic human stories of when people are using AI inappropriately, or they're using platforms which inappropriately being applied for mental health and well-being. But I'm incredibly excited about it. What's your view of the potential of AI in the field of well-being and mental health?
Yeah, some of it is what you're talking about now, which is accessibility, affordability, and putting in place mechanisms that help solve for the severe shortage. I mean, one of the things that I hope for the future is that more of our young people are attracted into the profession, because I don't think AI is going to completely solve for that gap. You still have to have humans in the equation, I believe.
Yeah, I agree.
But the ability to access professional help on demand 24/7, you can get connected to somebody who's on the other side of the world, but they're available when you need help. That's a game changer from my perspective, and something that just can't be done in the historic traditional model.
Yeah.
And that does help with the capacity piece. And then the extent to which, when you're starting with a purely AI platform before you get to a human, the humanity that's being built into AI, I find quite exciting. And the degree to which AI is starting to be able to exhibit empathy and have empathetic conversations. The guardrails are important.
Yeah,
so making
absolutely.
sure that I think chatbots or AI coaches, anytime you have AI interacting in a coach type role or an advisor type role with a human, it requires much more testing and refining than many other applications of AI to make sure that those guardrails are in place and to make sure that it's appropriately interpreting scenarios and responding to various scenarios. But the pace at which the technology is improving, to me, is very encouraging, because I can absolutely see, and this is one of the reasons why you created Unmind, just reflecting on our conversation when we first met, is being able to meet some of that need and the capacity man, to provide a better quality experience to people who are in need.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I had to do a trip recently. I was in Barcelona and I had to fly to San Jose, and it was a 48-hour trip. So really quick turnaround. And I was as I was walking along the beach before my flight, we have Nova, which is our AI mental health agent, and we just turned it into voice. So I was able to walk along the beach and have a voice conversation about how best to approach my sleep over that trip. And it was really extraordinary, because it was so personalized to me and so helpful as well. And it made me just really excited. That's today's world, and our roadmap, as you can imagine, is very exciting. It's like, it's only going to get better and more personalized. And it's a real opportunity, I think, to allow us to get upstream with mental health. And McKinsey a couple of years ago published a great report that it's been said before, but they articulated it nicely. That showed 75% of people in the workforce we should be promoting their well-being. 24% we should be thinking about mild and moderate needs for that group, and 1% are in crisis. But historically, it's been very difficult to address the 75% well, because promotion of well-being is hard unless it's very personalized, and you can't do it in a very personalized way in a way that is affordable. But actually, AI does allow us to do it in a personalized way that is affordable, and therefore it's more engaging and therefore more impactful. So I think it's incredibly exciting about the role it's going to play over the coming years.
It is exciting, and companies have become more sophisticated in understanding the impact of well-being on the financial imperative and the bottom line and performance of an organization, and looking at mental health well-being in a similar light to physical well-being. We're not at a point yet where it's completely undifferentiated, but I think we're headed there. And where you think about well-being for an individual, you think about mental health the same way you think about physical health and the preventative aspects of it. So for the 75%, having more of a preventative tune-up type mentality, as well as people who are in need of deeper, more sophisticated help.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And actually, there's both, a carrot and a stick there, isn't there? Because the carrot is that it's great because organizations are going to get the most out of their people. But the stick, I guess, is that, with health inflation, the cost to companies right now of mental illness and when people's health is in trouble is just staggering. And that graph is only going in one direction. So we need to get upstream. We need to catch, at a symptom level before it becomes a diagnosis level. It's so critical. So I could talk to you for hours, and there's a ton of topics we haven't got to yet. But I would love to ask you a little bit about where in your role today. I imagine the pressure, lots of demands. You've got lots of people looking to you for your leadership and for your guidance. And where do you go? Where do you go for your guidance? Where do you go for the kind of inspiration and personal and professional growth?
So again, I'm quite fortunate where I'm at to be able to be surrounded by WTW's expertise.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of thought leadership and inspiration from my colleagues, which is great.
That's wonderful.
I take full advantage of that. I also have a great network of peers. I think networking is so important. So both formally and informally, we get inspiration from each other. You and I were fortunate enough to meet at a well-being event that you co-sponsored with Modern. So thank you for that.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It was lovely. I really enjoyed it.
I have great relationships with external partners and external advisors. So in addition to WTW expertise, I have a good relationship with my advisor at Gartner, and I spent some time with Gartner, with the CHRO organization, KPMG, Accenture. I tap into all of the resources that are available to me to make sure that I'm constantly got an eye on the horizon. I really love Simon Sinek and his work on leadership in teams. I could listen to Simon all day long. Your good friend, Marcus Buckingham, and his work on love and work, because that really resonated with me in terms of our own culture. I like listening to Arianna Huffington. I had the opportunity to see her in person once, and listening to her talk about her own experience of burnout and exhaustion, and how that created a compelling need for her to actually pivot and to create some well-being resources in her Thrive platform. I thought was very inspiring. And Harvard Business Review, that's a go-to. And podcasts. When I'm getting ready in the morning, I always turn on a podcast.
Which podcast do you turn to?
So I have a number of news in 10 type podcasts. That's the news of the day, and I like listening to a U.S. version, and I like listening to the BBC Global News version, so getting a little bit around all sides of the world.
Yeah. It's sometimes hard to remember life before podcasts. I mean, I love turning to a podcast. Nothing like it. And is there a book, or is there a book that's influenced you in the past couple of years that has shaped the work you do?
Well, I think Marcus's book on love and work. It was so great to listen to him talk about it directly, because his passion is so enormous around the subject, and you can't help but get swept up in it when you hear him talk about it. But then also just understanding how impactful that connection is, and when you look at what really drives people to engage, to want to stay with the company, to have that discretionary effort that they're willing to give, it circles around to love. I think it's incredibly powerful.
It's so. I mean, for those that haven't read it, we'll share a link in the podcast. It's a fantastic book, and I totally agree. that it highlights something that we don't recognize enough, which goes back to the theme of this conversation a lot, which is the humanity, the connection, the trust with one another, our people, our peers is so critical and key. And also that the purpose of our life is really instrumental in our own state of well-being and health and engagement. But love is the word that we avoid a lot of the time. And that actually Marcus talks about how he's kind of put his head in the sand. He almost avoided it by unconsciously, but now realizes that that's the word that people talk about when people. He said, I love when he talks about, like, if you say to someone, should I go and see that film? If they say to you, yeah, maybe go and see that film, you're not going to go and see it. It's like when someone says, I love that film, that's when you go and see it. Or if somebody says, yeah, my work's okay, you don't want to go and work there. But if they say, I love my work, then you want to go and work there. So it's a really astute observation. I think he has a new book on the horizon as well. So looking forward to that.
The other thing I thought was fascinating about his research is it didn't vary by culture or geographic location. So you might assume that it would in certain countries that are perhaps more conservative, and it didn't.
Yeah. It speaks to the commonality of the human condition, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So great for global companies like any company, but especially global companies like ours, where you're very aware of variations in culture and how you need to manage variations in culture. But this is something that transcends that.
And do you think that, because I think, and I've spoken a lot with Marcus about this, but there are certain organizations for which the word love would be more easily reached than others. And some, I think for some people still, it's probably it's too hard for them to incorporate that language into their organization. But do you think that increasingly over time, do you predict more businesses will use that language or will be seeing that as essential?
I think, I wish I could say yes. But I think organizations will find other ways of saying that without actually saying it broadly. I don't think all organizations will be comfortable with that, but I think they will find ways to portray the same sentiment.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Well, I think that he's right in what he says. I think that what he's talking about is very, very sensible and makes tons of sense. I think it's really hard for a lot of organizations to understand it in a way that can be operationalized effectively. I think everyone should do it. I think it makes lots of sense. I'm not sure everyone will be able to do it. And I think in certain cultures around the world, it will be easier. So in North America, I think that there are probably a higher number of organizations that might be open to that language than, say, in the UK. So I think it's I think it's a journey the working world needs to go on. And I think it's one that we're probably still learning as we go along with it as well.
I think it depends too on where a company is in the maturity curve around how they think about HR and how they think about talent. Because there are still companies out there who look at HR as personnel, which should be long in the past, but and look at things like this as being too soft or squishy and nice to have. And so I think some of it depends on where a particular organization is and how they think about talent and HR.
I agree with that, and I think there's some areas of the working world will find it easy as well. So, some media companies might find it more easy to use than some banks, for example. I think the link to culture is really important, isn't it? A final question from me: as you're looking forwards over the next 5 to 10 years, what do you hope will happen to the role of HR? Let's say 5 years, for argument's sake. Over the next 5 years, what would you hope happens to the profession in that time frame?
Okay, so this is more on the tactical side, and then I'll move into more strategic. But the importance of the financial acumen and of being able to talk in numbers and to understand the numbers, I just think is critical for the ongoing progression of HR and for getting and maintaining a seat at the proverbial table. And I think for colleagues who are earlier in their career in HR, the sooner they can embrace that, the stronger career they'll have and the more impact they'll have with the business. The curiosity to continue exploring AI and to continue exploring new technology without the fear of what does it mean for me, that's a really hard balance to strike.
Wow, that's a hard one.
It's really hard, but we need people to be curious. We need people to be out there trying and exploring and challenging the status quo. I think, because we've always done it this way is never a good answer to anything. And so always looking for how can we deliver a better service to our clients? How can we deliver a better experience for our colleagues? Where do we need to upskill? I mean, that's a big one for HR right now with the pace of technology. Is what do we need to do to make sure that we're preparing a digitally competent workforce, that we're preparing an expectation that curiosity is a foundational and a non-negotiable behavior that we need people to have, that's a value in the organization. I think that's really critical. And then just always being future looking. So it's very, very easy, back to my earlier comment about capacity always exceeds, or demand always exceeds capacity in HR. So it's very easy to keep your head down and just produce. But you cannot be effective if you don't create the space to lift your head up and scan the horizon and see what's coming and see what's trending and look at what other people are doing and listen to those podcasts and read the latest thought leadership or listen to it in an audiobook. So making sure that we support and require HR professionals to create the space to do that, so that the organization who's relying on HR really to develop the talent strategy and to prepare the organization for the future is ready and willing to listen to those new ideas.
I love that answer. It's a really inspiring thing to hear, actually. So thank you so much for sharing it. And thank you so much for your time as well, because I know how busy your diary is. So I really appreciate you sharing your insights, your story, and your future gazing.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I just think HR is at the intersection of just about everything.
Yeah.
And we have a tremendous responsibility in making sure that our organizations are prepared for the future and performing the future. And there is nowhere else I'd rather be.
Kristy, thank you very much.
Thank you. Great talking to you, Nick.
Thank you for listening to Lead From Within, brought to you by Unmind. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Leave us a like and please do review if you found it valuable. Follow Unmind on LinkedIn for updates on all things regarding leadership, performance, and well-being. To find out more about Unmind's workplace well-being solutions for enterprise businesses, please go to unmind.com. That's unmind.com. Thank you and see you next time.